It's been a very informative presentation. So I took you on a trip without taking you on a trip. Right, here's a question. Ilona's presentation yesterday said that 90% of the rivers require restoration. What you're telling us is that things are really very bad. And so as a country and as Europe, we are facing the challenge of achieving good environmental status until 2027. Could be a rhetoric question, but I have to ask it. Do you think we're able to meet that deadline and achieve the target given the current status of the rivers? You want me to be the first to speak about this? Yes, we want to know your thoughts about this. My thoughts are that immediate implementation, like 2 days ago, so to implement the restoration program on the main river basins in Poland. Although obviously for the program to be fully implemented, we have to change the law. But anyway, to implement the program and to allow different groups to do the work, not just the administration. But obviously this has to be properly controlled. I mean, you have to have experts and hydrotechnical people on your side. What you don't want to do is to do it without experts. So, but anyway, if we were to introduce it across Poland, and if we could involve farmers and support them, because the main user of a catchment area anywhere in the world is the agri-sector. Up to 70% of the catchments worldwide are used by farmers. We went to Sweden, to Skåne, and 85% of a catchment area was arable land. But as it happens, friends of ours over there are running an excellent project, which is a great learning lesson. But anyway, if commonly introduced, restoration would improve the situation and would bring us closer to the requirements. But it's not about the requirements as such, it's about having clean and healthy rivers. Myself and Józef are older, and we remember two types of water in Poland. It was either a dead river killed by chemical substances, and there was fish, just regular fish. We didn't need to stock or restock the rivers, and the fish were there. But what we're seeing today is rivers that have been changed to a large extent over the years, and they need improvement. Well, it perhaps goes against the tendencies promoted by the powers to be, but we have a coalition, Save the Rivers coalition, and we work with similar organizations from across the border, and we proposed alternative options to reintroduce shipping into the Oder by improving the river basin. So just see what happens. I mentioned rain. Perhaps I'm going too fast. I'm usually hated by interpreters and they tend to avoid me after a presentation. I'm sorry about that, but it's a fact. Water flows way too fast in Poland, and it's not that we have not enough rain and that's why the land is dry. No, it's been a similar amounts of rainfall for the last 150 years. But the problem is that now with climate change, the type of rainfall has changed significantly, where we get a lot of torrential rain. But what's happened is that all of Poland is sealed off, basically. So 3/4 of the rainfall causes flood, and then it flows away and goes into the Baltic, and that's the water, that's all the water we get to see. So what you're saying is that our main focus today should be to support the implementation of the restoration program, right? You think that this is the main tool? Of course. Unlike what you might think, Poland has quite a number of experts. It's myself and Yusuf, but we are not the only ones, obviously. And we have quite a lot of scientific publications with Professor Wyżga and the Krakow University. Yusuf, correct me if I'm wrong, but Krakow and Mateusz and Professor Okruszko, Polish universities have been producing publications, so the knowledge is there. It's not about us not knowing, it's about not implementing. Okay, now I'm going to hand it over to Paweł. Do you have a question? Are you there? Yes. Professionally, I work with materials. Are there any guidelines or specifications to ensure that we select the right materials for the prisms to do the fish passes, for example? What you did, was this an experimental thing, or can we get some help? Perhaps I wasn't really clear about this, and apologies for that if that's the case, but picking the right grain size, well, we have a whole procedure and methodology on how to select that. There is a source, there is a project by Józef Jeleński, there are specific guidelines there on how to do it. But just to give you a general idea, doing the mixes is just like you do in road engineering, getting their proportions right. And we have the procedures for that. And there are some standards. I think German standards are the best, but we have similar ones. So all these things are there. It's not an experiment. And that was what I was trying to say. We don't have time for experiments anymore, and we don't have to do experiments because the knowledge is there. You don't want experiments, for example, like you have a group of anglers, they want to do some gravel bed, they put in some gravel, it's gone 2 months from later, and then they say it's not working. And this is why we have everything on paper. So it's there, it's by Józef, it's by Professor Wyżga. I suppose it's the Donetsk River. They ran a package of studies there, and it's also quoted in the restoration program. Józef, do you want to expand on that? Can I just butt in for a moment? How about you and Józef later send us some links that could be helpful for our work? Can you do that, guys? The literature is there in the handbooks. The restoration handbook has more than 10 pages of references. So we can use that. But the question is, how advanced are we compared to the rest of Europe? I think we're pretty much the forerunners. We got to a point that Germany now has 80% of the waters require revitalization. Perhaps not restoration, but to some extent, revitalization is needed. So the Rhine in some sections goes 8 meters into the valley, just perhaps like the Vistula near Włocławek. So Germany's waterways will never be in good status. And they are in real trouble. How to improve their waters? They simply don't know how to do it. Well, obviously, they know how to do it by now. They have guidelines in place. But they have to have the money and then go ahead with the work. And there has to be some work done in the catchment areas. Polish Waters, as an agency, cannot really do restoration. Yesterday, I was asked to give a quote on how much it would cost to evaluate flood damage, but they only want like 1 or 2 hours for that. Obviously, I couldn't cram this into 2 hours. So revitalization has to include flood risks. And I think I submitted 2 projects with the River Authority, but it's stuck there. What can we do for the Stradomka River? And I already have a solution because I've done this before, but for me to do this for every single river, you have to measure every single river and see whether the balances are kept. And sometimes it's not the problem with the river, it's the problem with the bed. Yes, Józef, I'm sorry, I have to stop you there because we have one more question. Plus, we have to have Marysia with the next presentation. We don't want her to wait. That's a much more complicated problem, and we have to start doing this. So we have to have consult professionalists. There aren't many, but it's not going to cost you 20 or 200,000 zlotys. It will probably cost you 200 million. Right, Artur, that's a question to you. What is the perception from the local communities to the work, to the restoration work you've done? I've already responded to that in the chat. But anyway, throughout the project, and this is only normal for all the life projects, we have to do a monitoring activity. And so each year we run surveys and we hold interviews. This is done by a professional company. The reports are available on the project website, Live Drava. So you can go there for the publications and the reports. But my conclusions, having read the reports, are the following. Clearly, we have more awareness and more knowledge and a greater understanding of the problems. When we first began, the local community wasn't much different from the national average in the sense that the further away from the river, the less people knew, down to 0. And those living by the river considered the river as a flood risk. And just a few kayaking businesses that thought that's a good place to do business, but things have to be, cleaned and the trees have to be cleared, etc. But things have changed, which is not just down to our project, but it's also thanks to very good communications with the community. There is a local tourist organization and the local authorities by the Drava River are doing a very good job communicating this and raising awareness. And the people living by the river are beginning to appreciate the river again. So that's really important. So, for example, we arranged a sequence of prisms in the city. And Yusuf knows a lot about this. People didn't want to do this because they were afraid that this was going to flood the town of Drawsko, and they wouldn't sign up for this. But there was a kayaking business from the Drawsko town, and they said, please improve the river for us. Why would I transport my tourists 100 kilometers away from here? It's right next door to me, so just improve this river for us. Anglers are an interesting community as well, although 90% of that community, I would say, they have the customer's approach, like, we want fish to be in the river. If there is no fish, then we have to change management. But anglers, and about 1 million people are anglers in Poland, and I would say about 100,000 of them understand the problems. Artur, an exhaustive answer. Thank you very much. Can I just say goodbye immediately, because I'm going to shoot some drava for you. Okay, see you later. Good luck.